welcome to episode 277 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 7th of April 2024. I'm Joe, and with me are Phelan.
How's it going?
Graham.
Hello.
And Will.
Good evening.
Let's do Voice of the Masses. The question this time was, how do you keep your Linux systems secure? How on earth did I come up with that question? Before we get into the replies we got, how do you lot keep your systems secure?
Well, I think we know how Graham keeps his secure. He uses a horrifically outdated fucking CentOS.
Who's laughing now? My way is to know that I don't know nearly enough and I'm completely ignorant of a whole bunch of security problems and rely on my distro and run a fully released, not bleeding edge, not rolling release, good old-fashioned, old man Ubuntu, where I know the security team are much better at this kind of thing than me and trust them to do their job because they're good.
Yeah, I'd be pretty much the same, to be honest, and listen to security podcasts, track general news sites that would just do mainly security stuff, but also try and limit as least amount of ports open to any service available, as much of it as possible behind WireGuard. Just keep it patched.
Well, Felipe says, I update my distros regularly and I only use bleeding edge on desktops, not servers.
So, got owned by XV then, yeah?
XV? Sure you mean XZ or XZ?
Right, yeah, you are correct there.
Although XV is a great image viewer, it's been around for decades and probably doesn't have any security flaws.
Probably not, no. Well, Robin says, by being very selective about software I install that's not from official repositories. Something that Hayden echoed. Generally, I use reputable sources for the packages I use. Since I'm in the land of Arch, I guess that's kind of difficult. And Freezer said, surely avoiding PPA, snaps, and Flatpak.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think all the PPAs that are out there with much more up-to-date packages are very appealing, especially when you just need that new version to run some new application. It is risky.
But isn't the point of snaps and Flatpak to be sandboxed and somewhat secure?
Yeah, but it can still access your home directory usually, in which case that's all the files I care about. I mean, I don't give a shite about my Etsy FS tab. Maybe there's things that it could be done, but all about the repo, taking it easy, nice and slow. Cadbury's caramel, essentially, of Linux distributions.
I hope that people learn a little bit more about piping curls straight to bash now. I doubt they will.
No, I doubt they will either.
Graham, we only got your jokey answer about your shitty old CentOS box.
Yeah, it's true that is still running, and CentOS suited me well for a long time. I have switched to Ubuntu as well. It just seems like I trust the people that are maintaining the packages for that. And I run a couple of servers, which I keep daily up to date that are important. But the biggest thing I worry about is my Home Assistant server at home, the Wise box, basically. So my default position, I think, is that I actually assume that if anybody really wanted to get access here, they can. So there's nothing super vital, but at the same time, I only have SSH access to home. I don't even kind of open up WireGuard or OpenVPN to the home network because I can do everything I need to through SSH if I have to access stuff. And I kind of rely on that and two different networks at home. Not so much in updating the distros. I just keep that as vanilla as possible on the Wise box. Arch, I just don't consider it to be secure because of the way I install so much from the AUR. And I suppose, I don't know, if somebody wanted access to my network, they can get it.
I'd take WireGuard security above SSH. I'd rather go through WireGuard first before it even reach SSH. I know you can lock it down to Keybase, but the fact that you can't even read, okay, you can detect WireGuard in theory, but it's not going to respond back unless you initially respond with a key. And that's what I love about it.
That's a really good point. I hadn't really thought about that.
A couple of people bring up fail to ban. Is that something that you use, Graham? Because surely it's just getting hammered if it's exposed to the internet on 22.
I have used it in the past, and I used to look at the logs, the auth logs, and think, my God, look at all these people. But now I just numb to it. It's not on the default port for what that, which does reduce it slightly, but not really.
So it's not on 22. Interesting. What port is it on?
It's on 2222.
Trust me, I have discovered that doesn't really help anyway. But
I know.
I do love now, you're going to catch me out because it's an English word I don't know. I've only seen it written down. Recidive, or essentially repeat offender.
Recidivist.
Yes. There is a plugin in Fail to Ban called that, which looks back through the people who continually fail, like on whatever it happens to be, like SASL or HTTP access or SSH, and then it bans them for longer. So it's that thing of where you have like one chance to fail on SSH, and then you get a week's ban on the Recidive fucking plugin.
Yeah.
I wish I could say that properly. But CrowdSec is the thing that people should look into. I use that for a few systems as well. That is a distributed user-based system. There's a company behind it as well, but there's a free version that is perfectly acceptable to use, and that has like extra lists that it adds as it's like a blacklist of IP tables rules.
They sponsored an episode once, I think.
Did they? Oh, that's right, actually, yeah. That's probably where I got the idea and looked into it from.
But I don't know if this is the spirit of the discussion, but I do use separate SSH. So I use passwordless login for SSH, and I use separate keys for every single client, which I manage.
That's good, though. Doesn't help if Giatan's trying to get access to it, mind you. But
Well, that's something that Gene said. Unique SSH keys for each remote system and each local machine.
I do, I worry about losing my phone or a laptop, and I don't want to have to revoke all of those keys, or at least have some control over it, because, I use machines and then lose them, or they go old, or give them away to somebody.
What do you think would happen if, say, you left your laptop in an airport and someone ran off with it? Do you think they'd be trying to log into all your servers, or do you think they'd be wiping it and taking it to the pawn shop?
it's encrypted. They could spend quite a lot of time trying to break into it.
They're not going to, are they? They're going to just wipe it clean.
I certainly believe that is the default situation for the vast majority of people. But after Giatan's exploits, I am more concerned that people who work for large open source companies or large software companies generally are quite easy to find. And so now I think that risk is not quite as clear-cut as it once was.
Christian says, I implement some Linux best practices, including SE Linux, AIDE, and fail to ban. So yeah, SE Linux, AppArmor. Do any of us implement stuff like that?
AppArmor, yeah. SE Linux, mainly Red Hat side things, which I don't really use, but
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I never switch it off. I always try to get around it if I need to. But even these days, I don't find it's an issue. It just behaves.
Well, Christian also said, I regularly check my servers using OpenVAS and automatically remediate most of the findings using DevSec, which is at dev-sec.io. The latter has been a real game changer for me. It scans hosts and also offers you Ansible, Puppet, and Chef code to automatically fix those findings. Requires some testing, though. Don't run it untested.
Christian is what we would refer to as a sadomasochist. Because installing OpenVAS is bad enough. It's a fucking nightmare. But yeah, it is good for detecting stuff. Lots of false positives, whatever. But yeah, bit of fun.
What sort of stuff is it supposed to find?
So it'll probe against ports. It'll run on the system through SSH. So, you can give it permission to log in. You can give it Samba permission to access shares. And then from there, it can kind of work through in a better way. So it's both a external just sort of penetration test, but it's also a log on and then see what's gone wrong or what patches haven't been applied, things like that as well. It's really good. It's just a bit of a nightmare to run it. There was a really good Docker install of it, actually, that a guy was doing as part of his job. He was a security researcher. I will try and give the link for the show notes.
Well, also on SE Linux, Tom said, in a way, I consider Fedora to be quite secure because of SE Linux, as I've read many zero-day bug reports noting that SE Linux would not allow it to be exploited on the system. So maybe we should all be using Fedora, eh?
Nope.
Or maybe those bug reports were written by some state actor.
Maybe, yeah. Well, Gene, who talked about using unique SSH keys, had a pretty good rundown. Restrict SSH access to password-protected key authentication only with no root login. User account with sudo instead of root. Lock the root account completely down. Unique SSH keys, as we said. Non-privileged accounts with /sbin/no login as the shell for services. Lockdown firewall with only the necessary ports open for applications and services to function. Automatic updates, at least for security updates, generally with a cron job. Set up fail to ban, at least for SSH.
What do you do when you have people visit your house? Do you have a separate Wi-Fi network for them? Do you delete their devices from the network after they've accessed it?
Absolutely have a guest network with a little QR code thing so they can just take a photo of it to join it.
I don't let people come in my house.
I give my password to anybody that asks for it.
Yeah.
How many chocolate bars will you give me? Huh? I'm cheap.
You turn up in your van full of puppies, I'm sold.
Yeah, I should be a lot better about that. I mean, we have a guest network, but I never delete the devices from the guest network, so...
Well, Sean said, step 0 is to evaluate if I even need a Linux host still. Can I move the workload on it somewhere else? Does it make sense to use a managed service? Then step 1 is keeping them from being accessible on the internet. Then it's the usual stuff of applying updates regularly, good monitoring, VLANs, etc. But I know this is going to piss you off, Phelim, but not actually running a full Linux VM, for example, just using a managed service and having it be someone else's problem to secure it.
I'd rather it be my problem because it's my data. I don't want to offload a paid-for system to someone else where they're potentially not even going to bother. Look, how many times has Google lost emails or Microsoft said, well, no, sorry, the Outlook thing is down now. Yeah, you don't get to have any of those files back, whatever. It happens all the time. I'd never trust somebody else to do your own data. If it's yours, you should be in charge of it because you're the only one who cares about it. They don't give a shit about it. You can say, oh, the reputational damage, blah, blah, blah. I don't buy that for a second. It's all cost-benefit analysis. And if yours is small and they don't give a shit about it, tough.
Digital Fox said, learning from others' experience, especially when they write about what happened after a compromise. For example, I locked down my SSH authorized keys file after Matrix's 2019 write-up, though I haven't yet implemented everything else there.
I had a find for this one time where there was a list of post-mortems up on GitHub that people have done. And it's a really cool way to learn what has been done or been found out before from a terrible, terrible series of events.
Well, thank you everyone who replied to the post on Mastodon. I'll link to that in the show notes. We didn't have time to go through everyone's, but it's worth a read through and definitely worth following us for future questions. Okay, this episode is sponsored by Kolide. What do you call an endpoint security product that works perfectly but makes users miserable? A failure. The old approach to endpoint security is to lock down employee devices and roll out changes through forced restarts, but it just doesn't work. IT is miserable because they've got a mountain of support tickets, employees start using personal devices to get their work done, and executives opt out the first time it makes them late for a meeting. You can't have a successful security implementation unless you work with end users. That's where Kolide comes in. Their user-first device trust solution notifies users as soon as it detects an issue on their device and teaches them how to solve it without needing help from IT. That way, untrusted devices are blocked from authenticating, but users don't stay blocked. Kolide is designed for companies with Okta and it works on macOS, Windows, Linux, and mobile devices. So if you have Okta and you're looking for a device trust solution that respects your team, support the show and go to kolide.com/late-night-linux to watch a demo and see how it works. That's kolide.com/late-night-linux. On to a bit of admin then. First of all, thank you everyone who supports us with PayPal and Patreon. We really do appreciate that. If you want to join those people, you can go to late-night-linux.com/support. And remember that for various amounts on Patreon, you can get an advert-free RSS feed for either just this show or all the shows in the Late Night Linux family. And remember that there's an extra show now, Hybrid Cloud Show, and you even get some episodes early. And if you want to get in contact, you can email show@latenightlinux.com. German state government ditching Windows for Linux, 30,000 workers migrating. So this is in Schleswig-Holstein. And I asked my wife where that is. She said, I don't know, somewhere up north. And it turns out it's like the most northerly part of Germany. But anyway, this all seems rather familiar, doesn't it?
It looks like somebody wants a new Microsoft HQ North to be in their state.
Well, I don't know. With Munich, they just started out all wrong. They rolled their own distro and had some Windows machines as well. And it was just a complete disaster from the beginning. Maybe these Northerners have learnt something and will actually implement it properly, and this will be a great success.
The Munich one was a success for a while. I know it was a change of mayor, wasn't it, that changed the kind of mindset? Because I remember Mike Saunders with Linux Format and Linux Voice, who still lives in Munich, we went to visit the people responsible for Linux, and they were kind of forced to make a few decisions about their KDE desktops and everything. But for a long time, it was going okay, and they'd proven it. They'd had tens of thousands of users using this open source software and not really knowing it. They'd done things like renamed Firefox to browser. So I think it worked to an extent. It's just that they were working within the limits of what people expected Windows to be, which changed, of course. So maybe going into that, if this will be an improvement, and it's great to see people making it. I wish this happened more. I wish this happened more in the UK. I wish it really happened in schools. But every time I mention that, we get messages saying, no, that's infeasible.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Mike Saunders, because he works for the Document Foundation now, and he's quoted in a Register article about this. He says, the transition to LibreOffice is planned as very short-term and will be mandatory. It is one of 6 columns of a larger and longer-term transition to free and open-source software, including Linux, Nextcloud, Thunderbird, an open-source alternative to Active Directory, etc. And later in the piece, they quote him saying, the reasons for switching to Linux and LibreOffice are different today. This is regarding the Munich fiasco. Back when Linux started, it was mostly seen as a way to save money. Now the focus is far more on data protection, privacy, and security. And hopefully Mike is right here, because before it was just about cost, and so it's very easy to argue both sides of that. Like Microsoft can come in and say, oh, we'll give you discounts and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But the privacy and security stuff and data compliance stuff, which is a bigger deal in the EU now, maybe that will be enough to push this over the line properly. So I'm going to be cautiously optimistic about this. I think there's a reasonable chance it will succeed this time, and that they will have learnt the lessons from Linux and Munich and all of that. At Phelim, you can stop being cynical.
I'd be massively cynical that they're going to take that line down. There'll be all sorts of shenanigans going on, I'd imagine.
Well, yeah, there'll be all sorts of discounts offered, and I'm sure that they will do everything they can, Microsoft, to stop this. But I don't think they can compete on the privacy and data compliance stuff.
Well, no, they can't. And it would be nice if that actually was taken into account. We'll see.
Maybe they'll do a special version of Windows that doesn't collect all sort of telemetry and all that.
Sure.
The problem in the past has always been that the will is there, but it's very easy to be swayed otherwise. And a change of leadership or a change of financial situation means that Microsoft have an opportunity to swoop in and save the day. And this is what they've done time and time again. And we talked about this years ago, that whenever there is a big like city level or whatever meeting, there's always somebody from Microsoft at that table. And they will absolutely not take this lying down. And so, yes, we should be concerned that they will try and win back this very significant, very large deal. But as we say, they cannot compete on the privacy front. And the correct route has always been that we should have focused on the privacy aspects. I think it's fair to say that until relatively recently, Windows itself was not primarily interested in obtaining your personal information, and now it kind of is. So I think that it's a good opportunity. Don't rest on our laurels and expect that there will be Microsoft coming up with reasons why this should not continue, but they just need to be robustly defended on a privacy front.
Let's do some discoveries then. Will, what's REMBG?
It removes backgrounds, and it's some AI bullshit, so I know that Phelim's going to get cross, but bear with me. It's a nice, straightforward AI model that is able to remove the background from a lot of photographs and drawings generally. But it's all open. You can download the models. You can train your own models. Interestingly for me, it integrates really nicely into Python and with the Python imaging library. And so you can just use normal Python. You can give it an image and ask it to remove the background, and it will. Now, full disclosure, I haven't managed to get it running completely successfully, but I've only been playing with it for about 10, 15 minutes. But it just looks like a really nice, straightforward way of stripping out backgrounds from a whole bunch of pictures. You could script it. I don't know quite why you would want to, but you can. You know, you could have a whole bunch of photos in a directory and just point it at that directory, and off it will go relatively quickly, removing the backgrounds. And it does a pretty good job. I'm quite pleased with the results. So, yeah, if that's something you're interested in trying out, then I would suggest it.
Does it fully run on your own machine?
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of the ones that you see where it's essentially just a horrible shim to a service on the internet, which, you know, who wants to be sending their kids' pictures up there or whatever? Like, it's really dodgy. So that's quite good if it is a locally hosted thing, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, if it's a photo that you don't care about, like I just wanted to make a silly meme today, for example, Photopea, which is basically like a web browser-based Photoshop type thing, actually has an option to do this. And it takes just a few seconds and just removes the background, cuts it out perfectly.
Well, and the iPhone, I just have to put this in there, the iPhone does this out of the box for Nout locally as well, and it does a very good job. I'd say that this is not quite up there with the quality of the iPhone automatic background removal, but it's not bad.
Phelim, NV Top.
Yeah, so I always assumed NV Top was the NVIDIA Top, but no, apparently is no longer. Whether it started, I'm not even entirely sure if it was the exact same project that started out as NV Top, which was NVIDIA only, because the one that you can install from the app repo is NVIDIA only, but this one stands for apparently Neat Video Card Top, which I think feels a bit like a very, very forced backronym. So anyway, it doesn't matter. It's all good. It now works on AMD, as long as you're using the modern AMD GPU driver, not the old Radeon one. Apparently even has M1 and M2 Apple support. It has Huawei, Intel, and obviously NVIDIA, and then the Qualcomm Adreno. But the thing I found about it was, and I resorted to looking through the source code to try and figure this out, yet I still could not. I ran it on my own machine. I've got AMD GPU. It's RX 580. It's quite old at this point, 2018 era. But in there, Telegram shows up of a type of compute. It's doing fuck all, but it is type compute. I looked all the way through the source code, couldn't figure out. I mean, I could see where it says, yes, it's either compute or graphic or a combo of the both, but I don't know what that actually means. And why the hell is Telegram in there? What's it doing? Is it like Bitcoin mining in the background?
You didn't actually explain what this does. It's just a way to monitor what your GPU is doing.
Yes. It shows you a graph, the memory, and then processing usage of your video card, essentially. It does include also your CPU in there too. So if you've got a bunch of processors, there's like a top like output at the top where you can sort by various columns, whatever, and then see what things are doing. Interesting enough, but I was kind of more concerned as to what the hell the compute means. I mean, in their example, there's a screenshot where FFmpeg is rendering a video, but I mean, what the hell's Telegram doing rendering on my graphics card? With 0%, I might add. So, very strange.
Graham, Giada.
Yeah, this is a music production application. It's been around for years, but
I'm so shocked.
Yeah, but it's actually a little bit different. So the main thing is it's been around for a long time, but the 1.0 release, I think, just occurred in February. I've looked at it a couple of times over the years, and it's what's known as a looper. And if you're at all interested in creating music around loops is the best way, the easiest way to get started, but also it's a lot of fun. A lot of artists kind of base their entire kind of career around loops. And a looper in this sense means that you record something, you stop recording, and then it immediately starts looping, and then you kind of add to it. And Giada is an application just meant for this kind of way of recording a loop, playing it back, controlling whether different loops are playing back at the same time or not. And it handles audio and MIDI. It has remote control for all of its functions. It can work as a plugin. It can use plugins within itself, so you can apply effects to the loops. It's different to something like Bitwig or Ardour or Audacity because it's meant for this kind of real-time performance. So it's actually great for triggering effects. You can use it as like a sample triggerer, playback, remote control, but also for this kind of creating. I mean, Phelim and Joe, you're both guitarists, and I'm sure looping is like a big part.
That's a bit of a stretch there, Graham, but thanks.
But I mean, looping it's a lot of fun. It's deceptively simple, and yet there aren't many solutions for creating a kind of an easy loop environment. You want to press a button to record, play something, press the button to stop, that starts looping. Press the button to record, you want to start recording on a different channel on top of what you've already recorded, and then you want some easy way of stopping what you've previously recorded and recording new things. And there aren't many pieces of software, really, that can do this. There are people that have created pedals to do this and remote controllers, but Giada, I think it's pronounced, does all this in a single open source app.
The UI for this looks like it was designed by a kernel developer, though.
Yeah. I have to. Okay, that is the elephant in the room.
It's all very blocky looking, but yeah, as long as it works, it's fine.
Clean lines, Joe. Come on, XFCE. You must love that.
Yeah, it does make me feel at home looking at it. You're right. No, it's actually got more of a sort of tiling window manager look to it, I think. So that's why Graham loves it.
Yeah, but I have used it, and I think the best way to do is to just forget about the UI, map things to buttons, either on your QWERTY keyboard or some other device over MIDI if you can.
Well, I have discovered that I can make my laptop do this.
That's the Ubuntu login, is it not?
It's the old school Ubuntu login, yeah. So I saw an article on OMG Ubuntu about how to do that for GNOME. And then I thought, I want to do this for XFCE. That would be funny. And Joey links to the OGG file that you need to do this. So I downloaded that. And then it turns out that play, which is part of SOX, is how you do this. You just play, and then you can set the volume. In this case, I do -V 0.9, and then --magic. And that just works out magically how to play it for you with the file format. And then you just put the file that you want to play. And so I just put that in a shell script and then started that on login in Ubuntu. And play is the same thing that I use for my white noise machine, because it can generate white noise and stuff like that, as well as just play files, audio files. So yeah, if you want to have an old school nostalgic startup sound, at least in XFCE, it's really, really easy. I'm sure there's ways to run in Plasma and stuff on login. And you just need the OGG file and a script to make it play.
Not wishing to be a curmudgeonly old git, but when did you make this change, roughly? How long ago?
I did this yesterday.
Okay, so I reckon by tomorrow then you'll be sick of it.
Yeah, I did turn that laptop on today and I was thinking, maybe I'll disable this actually.
I just think the XFCE style is not to have startup sounds, right?
Yeah, but it's just so nostalgic.
Mm.
And, if you mute your laptop, then it's not going to do it.
Yeah.
So there's that. So I just need to remember to unmute it when I want to hear it. I don't know. I probably will disable this eventually, but it is quite funny still.
I used Kubuntu, so I didn't hear a lot of these sounds, but I remember there was the intro drum thing that just kind of went drum, and that was it.
Yeah, that's at the login page. And then once you've logged in, you'd get this full on with the drums and the synth and whatever it is.
Okay. And was this 606 that this all came in, I think, wasn't it?
I can't remember. It was certainly in 710, which was the first one I used, I think. And then they got rid of it in about 2012, I think. But I put a video of my laptop doing this on Mastodon, and loads of people were like, that takes me back. And I remember that. But I think ultimately you are right, Will, that it's a bit of a novelty that will wear off very quickly.
That's fun while it lasts.
Exactly. Right, well, we'd better get out of here then. We'll be back next week when it'll probably be news and stuff. But until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Phelan.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.